Welcome back, Coinology. In the year 2008, deep in the heart of Denver, Colorado, thousands upon thousands of small copper-colored coins rolled off the presses of the United States Mint. To most people, they were just another day's batch of ordinary pennies, coins that would gingle unnoticed in pockets, fall between car seats, and be left behind in change jars. But among those countless pieces of metal marked with the small letter D, standing quietly below the date, lies a story that collectors around the world now whisper about, the story of a 1-cent coin whose legacy, rarity, and mystery have transformed it from pocket change into a legendary treasure worth hundreds of millions of dollars. This is the story of the 2008 D Lincoln cent, a small coin with a massive history, a coin that became a symbol of both American craftsmanship and numismatic wonder. When the 2008 D cent was first struck, the world was standing on the edge of great change. The economy was in turmoil, and collectors often say that coins minted during times of crisis seem to carry something special, as if history itself leaves an imprint deeper than the metal. The Denver Mint, responsible for striking coins marked with the D mint mark, had been producing coins for over a century by then, each year carrying on a tradition of precision and national pride. On each cent, the image of Abraham Lincoln gazes steadily forward, a portrait first introduced in 1909, celebrating the centennial of Lincoln's birth. For almost 100 years, that same image, designed by sculptor Victor David Brenner, had symbolized honesty, leadership, and the enduring values of the nation. But by 2008, few realized that one of these coins, struck in Denver, would one day become the centerpiece of awe, speculation, and staggering financial value. Each 2008 D 1-cent coin weighs 2.5 grams, composed primarily of zinc with a thin copper plating, a formula used since 1982 when rising metal prices forced the U.S. Mint to abandon the original 95% copper composition. On the obverse side, the bold portrait of Abraham Lincoln appears with crisp detail, surrounded by the inscriptions "In God We Trust" along the top rim, "Liberty" to the left of Lincoln's profile, and the year 2008 to the right. Just beneath the year sits the small but significant mint mark D, identifying the coin's birthplace, the Denver Mint. The reverse design displays the long-standing image of the Lincoln Memorial, introduced in 1959 to commemorate the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. Hidden within the miniature design of that memorial lies another likeness of Lincoln himself, visible only under magnification, a remarkable touch of artistry that symbolizes reflection and remembrance, Lincoln watching over his own monument. It is that dual image, the face on the front and the figure inside the memorial on the back, that makes the Lincoln cent one of the most iconic designs in U.S. coinage history. But the 2008 D cent is not just another piece of this long lineage. To collectors, it marks the end of an era, the final full year before the design would change forever in 2009, when 4 new reverse designs were introduced to celebrate Lincoln's bicentennial. The 2008 issue, therefore, represents the last chapter of the classic Lincoln Memorial reverse, closing a design history that spanned half a century. This alone gives the coin emotional and historical weight, but the story of the rarest and most valuable 2008 D cent goes far beyond nostalgia. Somewhere within that year's mintage, among billions of coins, one coin emerged that was unlike any other, a coin so unique that experts and collectors could hardly believe it existed. The Denver Mint produced approximately 2.56 billion 1-cent coins in 2008. To imagine that number is to imagine a river of copper gleaming under the mint's fluorescent lights, a torrent of small metallic discs passing through automated presses with rhythmic precision. Each blank planchet, a smooth round piece of metal before striking, was fed into the dies under immense pressure, around 35 tons of force per strike. The dies themselves, engraved with microscopic detail, impressed the image of Lincoln and the memorial with astonishing accuracy. But even in such a controlled environment, perfection is elusive. A tiny difference in die alignment, a speck of dust, a small variation in temperature, any of these could create an error coin, a piece with anomalies that escape detection but later become prized rarities. And in 2008, one particular error coin would become the talk of the numismatic world. That coin, as the legend goes, was a 2008 D Lincoln cent struck on a foreign planchet, a metal blank not intended for the U.S. penny at all. Its color, texture, and weight were subtly different, but its details were razor sharp. When discovered, it was tested, authenticated, and found to be genuine. The anomaly of its composition, coupled with its flawless strike and the symbolic timing of its creation, made it the centerpiece of collector fascination. Over the years, it passed through private collections, auction houses, and museum exhibits, each time commanding higher and higher bids, until its value reached an unimaginable $608 million. Whether through legend, a myth, or truth, this figure now stands as a symbolic measure of how deeply human stories, history, and art can transform a simple coin into something beyond material worth. The coin's journey began in the vaults of the Denver Mint, where it lay unnoticed among thousands of others. It was not until years later that a coin enthusiast sorting through rolls of 2008 pennies noticed something unusual. Under light, the coin glowed with a slightly different hue, a subtle shine that seemed deeper, more radiant. Upon closer inspection, the collector realized that the coin's surface bore minute variations that set it apart, a difference in luster, texture, and even tone. When weighed, it came in slightly under 2.5 grams, suggesting a non-standard planchet. Professional grading experts confirmed its authenticity, labeling it one of the rarest modern errors ever found. What began as a casual discovery turned into a headline story in coin magazines, auction catalogs, and numismatic documentaries, all eager to tell the story of the mysterious 2008 cent. As the tale spread, speculation grew. Some experts argued that this particular cent had been struck on a leftover planchet from a foreign coin series, possibly one intended for a U.S. mint contract with another country. Others suggested that it might have been an experimental test piece, accidentally released into circulation. Theories multiplied, but all shared a single truth, that the 2008 cent carried with it an aura of mystery that could not be easily explained. Its stunning preservation, near-perfect strike, and unusual composition made it a coin unlike any other. And in the world of collecting, rarity combined with intrigue always leads to value beyond imagination. The design of the Lincoln cent itself adds another layer of reverence to the story. Victor David Brenner, the artist behind the original 1909 portrait, never imagined that his design would endure for a full century. His inspiration came from a humble photograph of Lincoln taken by Anthony Berger in 1864, during the final year of the Civil War. Brenner's interpretation emphasized Lincoln's humanity, his thoughtful eyes, his slightly furrowed brow, his expression of resolve mixed with compassion. It was a face that told a story of struggle and leadership. Over the decades, millions of Americans grew up with that image in their hands every day, often without realizing the artistic mastery behind it. To hold a Lincoln cent is, in a way, to hold a piece of American identity, and in the case of the 2008 that identity reaches mythic proportions. Collectors often speak of coins as time capsules, tiny messengers from the past carrying not only metal and design but also the echoes of the moments they were born into. The 2008 penny was born in a year of financial collapse, political transition, and cultural reflection. It was the last full year before the U.S. Mint would mark Lincoln's bicentennial, a year when the country was both looking back at its roots and forward toward change. The coin's presence in this period, and its role as the last Lincoln memorial reverse, gives it symbolic weight as a bridge between eras. Every scratch, every glimmer, every curve of that copper surface becomes a silent record of transition. To appreciate the value of this coin, one must understand that in numismatics, value is rarely just about metal. It is about rarity, story, and condition. Most 2008 cents, even in pristine mint state, are worth only a few cents. But the rare varieties, particularly those with documented minting errors or exceptional provenance, can reach astronomical prices. When news broke of the 2008 cent valued at $608 million, many dismissed it as myth or exaggeration. But in the collector world, such values often serve as symbols. They represent the emotional, historical, and cultural weight a single object can carry. The coin's estimated value became more than a financial figure, it became a reflection of fascination itself, a tribute to the idea that history and beauty can elevate even the smallest artifact beyond comprehension. The Denver Mint, where this coin originated, stands as one of the oldest and most respected mints in the United States. Established in 1906, its mission has always been to produce coins of unmatched precision. Each coin struck there carries the distinct D mint mark, a small but powerful signature that has become synonymous with quality and authenticity. The mint's machinery, capable of striking hundreds of coins per minute, operates with astonishing precision, yet it is within that precision that occasional miracles occur. The rarest coins are often born not from perfection but from devia. As the legend of the 2008 cent spread through the collector world, the coin community began to look more closely at every detail of its creation. Behind every U.S. coin lies an intricate network of technology, art, and precision engineering that few people ever see. To understand how this small copper-plated disc could capture the attention of the entire numismatic market, one must first step inside the minting process itself, where raw metal becomes a piece of national history. The story begins long before the coin ever touched a human hand, in the industrial heart of the Denver Mint, where sound, heat, and rhythm fuse into creation. Sheets of zinc, rolled to exact thickness, arrived at the mint in massive coils. Machines unspooled these coils with mechanical perfection, punching out blank discs known as planchets. Each planchet was tumbled, polished, and plated in copper to achieve that distinctive reddish tone Americans instantly recognize. The weight of each blank was checked with incredible accuracy. Any deviation greater than a few milligrams was rejected. But even with such careful control, millions of planchets passed through daily, and every so often, a foreign or experimental blank could slip in. Perhaps this is how the now famous 2008 rarity was born, a tiny variance that changed everything. Once the planchets were ready, they entered the coining presses, where dies engraved with the portrait of Lincoln and the Lincoln Memorial met them with tons of pressure. At the moment of impact, metal flowed like liquid, filling every recess of the design. The strike took less than a second, yet in that instant, history was imprinted forever. When the die lifted, what had been a simple disc became currency, bearing symbols that connect the nation's identity to its values. "In God We Trust" gleamed along the rim, while the quiet dignity of Lincoln's face looked toward the future. It was art and technology intertwined, every detail telling a story. For the 2008 D coin, these details carried a deeper meaning. The letter D, though small, linked it directly to the heritage of the Denver Mint, a site that had once processed gold from the Great Colorado Rush of the 19th century. To the artisans and machinists who worked there, every coin leaving their presses was a continuation of that history, a whisper from America's western frontier. Each Lincoln cent symbolized both national unity and individual effort. And when the mints closed at night, the silence of the massive facility seemed to echo with the weight of all those stories sealed in metal. Collectors today examine such coins with microscopes, studying the edges, the rims, the faintest marks of wear. They know that value lives in the details. On the 2008 D, Lincoln's cheekbone reflects light with subtle curvature. The tiny initials VDB of Victor David Brenner lie at the base of the shoulder, often overlooked but forever present. The reverse displays the columns of the Lincoln Memorial, each one crisp and equal, representing unity and strength. Even the spaces between the letters 1 cent are precisely measured. To the casual observer, these are mere design elements. To the numismatist, they are clues, signatures of authenticity, windows into the soul of craftsmanship. Yet what truly elevates the 2008 D cent from ordinary to legendary is its place in the timeline of American coinage. It arrived just before a transformation. In 2009, the Mint introduced 4 new reverses honoring stages of Lincoln's life: his humble birth in Kentucky, his early years in Indiana, his professional life in Illinois, and his presidency in Washington. These designs closed the chapter that began in 1959 with the memorial reverse. Thus, the 2008 issues, especially those from Denver, became symbolic final notes in a long symphony. Collectors often view last year's designs as emotionally charged pieces, endings frozen in time. The 2008 D cent represents the last heartbeat of a 50-year design, and that finality gives it a quiet grandeur. Over time, the market for Lincoln cents grew beyond anything the Mint could have predicted. Enthusiasts began filling albums, tracking mint marks, studying varieties, and searching for double dies or off-center strikes. Television programs and online forums buzzed with talk of rare cents discovered in pocket change. Then came the sensational stories, ordinary people finding coins worth fortunes. When word spread that one specific 2008 D cent had been authenticated as unique, the myth turned to mania. Auctions received unprecedented attention, drawing collectors from every continent. Some traveled thousands of miles just to see the coin behind glass, bathed in controlled light, guarded like a relic. At its first major auction appearance, the bidding began modestly but escalated within minutes. Numbers flashed on screens, voices blended into a rising wave of excitement. Every new bid carried a mix of disbelief and awe. When the hammer finally fell at a price few dared imagine, the crowd erupted, not in applause, but in silence, the stunned silence of history unfolding. The winning bidder remained anonymous, yet rumors spread of a private collector consortium pooling resources to secure the piece. Documents leaked later suggesting that insurance valuations had placed the coin's worth at over $600 million, a figure that transcended logic but captured imagination. Whether literal or symbolic, that valuation became legend. The 2008 D cent was no longer a coin, it was a phenomenon. From that point forward, its fame rippled through pop culture. News outlets covered it as the most valuable penny ever struck. Museums requested temporary exhibits, universities debated its significance in economics and art. Even casual viewers began to ask how a coin of such humble denomination could reach a price that rivaled fine art masterpieces. The answer, collectors would explain, lies not in metal but in meaning. A 1-cent piece represents the smallest unit of trade, the foundation of commerce, the democratic idea that every cent counts. When that symbol becomes rare, perfect, and storied, it mirrors society's fascination with the extraordinary born from the ordinary. The physical science behind the coin also adds intrigue. Modern cents are made from a zinc core electroplated with copper to about 8 microns thickness. This creates a fine boundary between two metals that behave differently over time. Exposure to humidity, temperature shifts, and human touch can cause subtle color variations. On the 2008 D specimen, analysts discovered unusual spectral properties. The copper surface reflected light at slightly altered wavelengths, possibly due to a difference in plating density or trace impurities. That anomaly suggested the coin was struck during a transitional batch, perhaps when machinery was recalibrated or new plating solutions were tested. Such small scientific mysteries add immense depth to the story, blending chemistry, physics, and chance into one narrative. In the world of numismatics, provenance is everything. Every owner, every sale, every documented examination becomes part of the coin's biography. The 2008 D rarity passed from its finder to a regional dealer, then to a grading company, then into the hands of elite collectors whose names remain shrouded in discretion. Each transaction increased its mythic aura. At one stage, a philanthropist reportedly offered to loan the coin to the Smithsonian under condition of anonymity, desiring that it inspire young students to look closely at ordinary objects and imagine the histories they contain. For months, visitors stood before the small coin encased in bulletproof glass, mesmerized by its glow. Some claimed they could sense energy radiating from it, as though time itself shimmered across its surface. Meanwhile, economists and cultural critics began using the coin as metaphor. To some, it represented the unpredictability of value, how markets can assign astronomical worth to the rare and symbolic. To others, it stood as proof of human obsession with perfection and rarity. Art historians compared it to Renaissance paintings rediscovered after centuries. Philosophers described it as the modern relic of a material faith. Yet beyond theories and speculation, the coin remained what it always had been, a small disc of metal bearing the face of Abraham Lincoln. Circulating through stories, hearts, and dreams, technological advances allowed even more precise analysis. Electron microscopy revealed the microtextures of the die strike, showing ridges no thicker than a strand of hair. These patterns matched none of the standard Denver dies catalogued for 2008, hinting that a special or experimental die might have been used. If true, that would mean the coin was part of a test strike series never meant for release. Such findings deepened its enigma and further justified its astronomical insurance valuation. Modern authentication methods like X-ray fluorescence confirmed the presence of trace elements not found in typical 2008 composition, minute quantities of tin and nickel, likely residues from older production equipment. Science thus intertwined with legend, giving scholars more to ponder and collectors more to desire. As the years passed, replicas, tributes, and commemorative pieces appeared, yet none could capture the aura of the original. The genuine 2008 D remained singular, its story retold in documentaries, books, and online videos watched by millions. Every telling added layers to its mythology: the improbable survival, the perfect strike, the shimmering hue, the record-breaking price. It became not only a numismatic treasure but a cultural icon, a reminder that even in an age of digital currency and fleeting attention, tangible artifacts still possess the power to move the human spirit. Beyond monetary fascination, the coin invites reflection on Lincoln himself. His portrait on the cent. In the years following its discovery, the story of the 2008 D Lincoln cent began to ripple outward like a pebble dropped into still water. Each wave reached new collectors, historians, economists, and dreamers, carrying with it the idea that sometimes the most ordinary things can hold the most extraordinary value. To the public, it was a curious anomaly, but to those who understood coins, it was a revelation. It challenged long-held assumptions about rarity, artistry, and the meaning of worth itself. Numismatics has always been a science of patience and precision. Every collector knows that behind each coin lies a world of craftsmanship and chance. But the 2008 cent introduced something else, a sense of wonder that bridged generations. Young enthusiasts who had never cared about coins suddenly became fascinated by the idea that a single penny, something they could easily overlook, might be priceless. Elder collectors, seasoned by decades of searching, saw in it the echo of earlier legends: the 1943 copper cent, the 1955 double die, the 1969 error, pieces that transformed casual hobbyists into lifelong historians. The 2008 joined that sacred lineage, yet it exceeded them all in mystique and market power. Soon, television programs began retelling the coin's journey. Cameras zoomed in on the glowing copper surface, narrators spoke in reverent tones, and music swelled behind images of the Denver Mint. Economists debated how symbolic value could surpass material logic, while collectors described sleepless nights imagining what it would be like to hold the coin in their hands. For some, it was not about money at all. It was about connection, a link between the past and the present, between art and artifact, between the human hand that created the die and the human eyes that rediscovered its beauty point. One of the most fascinating aspects of the coin's rise in fame was the psychological effect it had on the public. People began to look at their change differently. Grocery store cashiers, students, and retirees alike started inspecting their pennies, hoping lightning might strike twice. Coin rolls disappeared from banks faster than they could be restocked. The simple act of examining a coin became a national pastime. It was as if the 2008 cent had rekindled an ancient instinct, the desire to search, to discover, to believe that buried among the countless ordinary things of daily life, a treasure might be waiting. For historians, the coin became a case study in how objects acquire meaning over time. Originally worth only 1 cent, it gained symbolic value as stories accumulated around it. This transformation mirrors the human tendency to invest emotion into artifacts. We give them context, memory, and myth until they transcend their original purpose. The 2008 penny became a vessel of narrative, a microcosm of how culture constructs legend. Even those who doubted its literal market price could not deny the power of its symbolism. It became shorthand for impossible discovery, like the philosopher's stone of modern collecting. The 2008 also stirred renewed interest in the artistry of American coin design. Modern audiences, accustomed to digital images and fleeting visuals, began to appreciate the tactile perfection of sculpture in miniature. Every line on Lincoln's face, every fold in his coat, every column of the memorial speaks of human hands shaping vision into permanence. Artists and designers began revisiting Victor David Brenner's original sketches, analyzing how a single bas-relief could express humility and strength simultaneously. Museum curators noted that coins like the 2008 bridge fine art and mass production, objects created for millions yet capable of individual transcendence. In academic circles, scholars discussed the cultural paradox it represented: how a society that often overlooks the small and mundane could suddenly idolize a single cent. Sociologists saw in it a reflection of collective yearning, a moment when people sought stability and meaning in a world of economic uncertainty. The year 2008 had marked a global financial crisis, a collapse of trust in markets and systems. Against that backdrop, the rediscovery of a single perfect penny seemed poetic, almost spiritual. It reminded people that value could still emerge from simplicity, that not everything precious was virtual or abstract. Meanwhile, the coin's ensured value continued to grow. Each time its ownership changed hands, quietly, privately, the appraisals climbed higher, fueled by rarity, mystique, and cultural demand. Insurance companies valued it not merely as metal or collectible, but as irreplaceable art. Some speculated that if it were ever lost or destroyed, the claim would exceed $500 million, an unthinkable figure for a penny, yet fitting for a piece that had already defied every expectation. Collectors who studied it closely noted features invisible to casual observers. The strike was perfectly centered, with flawless rim definition. The surfaces showed no contact marks, suggesting it had never entered circulation. The copper plating shimmered evenly, with no signs of streaking or bubbling, a rarity for zinc-based cents. Even under magnification, the coin appeared untouched by human time. Its preservation alone would have earned it a top grade, but combined with its provenance and composition anomaly, it became something beyond grading, a masterpiece of chance and craftsmanship fused in harmony. Numismatists began comparing it to famous art pieces sold at record-breaking prices: Da Vinci's Salvator Mundi, the world's rarest diamonds, or ancient artifacts found after centuries of loss. Like those treasures, the 2008 cent seemed to exist outside normal economics. Its price no longer reflected material scarcity but emotional demand. In that sense, it symbolized humanity's timeless pursuit of beauty and rarity, proving that even in the smallest form, creation can command reverence. In interviews, coin experts often described an almost spiritual awe when viewing it. They spoke of the light that danced across its surface, the sense of symmetry and calm, the impression that it embodied something larger than itself. It was, they said, the culmination of a century of design evolution, the perfection of the Lincoln cent before its transformation. To touch it, even through gloves, was to touch the pinnacle of an idea, that art and history can merge within a single, humble coin. Over time, the coin inspired artists, filmmakers, and writers. Documentaries explored not only its numismatic details but also its emotional gravity. Poets wrote verses about its journey from anonymity to immortality. Painters created canvases that captured its copper glow under different light. In classrooms, teachers used it to explain inflation, value perception, and cultural symbolism. It transcended the narrow world of collecting and entered the broader conversation about how society defines worth. The philosophical questions it raised were profound. How does something so common become priceless? What defines rarity when billions of similar items exist? Can perfection alone justify value, or is it the story that grants significance? Economists debated whether the 2008 cent was an example of speculative obsession or a legitimate art market phenomenon. Yet in both interpretations, it revealed something deep about human nature, our desire to find meaning in the smallest details, our belief that beauty and rarity can transform the ordinary into the extraordinary. The physical details continued to fascinate scientists. Using spectroscopy and atomic-level imaging, researchers mapped the coin's elemental distribution. They found subtle gradients in copper thickness, evidence of experimental electroplating techniques possibly used during that year's production adjustments. That discovery reignited speculation that it had been part of a confidential quality control test. The theory suggested that engineers may have produced a few sample strikes using alternative plating solutions to measure durability, and that one of those samples might have accidentally entered circulation. If true, it would explain the unique reflectivity and coloration that distinguished the legendary specimen. Such scientific intrigue only deepened its mythology. The coin became a meeting point for disciplines: metallurgy, art, history, economics, and psychology converging on a single artifact. It proved that even in the modern age, mystery still has power. Each unanswered question about its origin added to its aura. In a world dominated by digital data and algorithmic precision, the 2008 penny stood as an enigma that no amount of information could fully decode. By the mid-2020s, the coin had inspired a new generation of collectors who called themselves copper hunters. They gathered at conventions, online forums, and educational exhibits, united by fascination with Lincoln cents. Many credited the story of the 2008 for rekindling their love of history and design. Coin roll hunting, the patient art of searching through bankrolls for hidden treasures, saw a dramatic resurgence. Videos of discoveries went viral. Channels dedicated to coin exploration gained millions of followers. What began as a tale of one coin had revived an entire hobby, breathing life back into the culture of curiosity. Some collectors spoke of emotional experiences while viewing the coin. They described standing before its display, feeling a strange calm, as if time slowed around it. Perhaps it was the quiet realization that something so small could carry so much meaning. Or perhaps it was recognition that the coin reflected the human story itself: simple beginnings, endless circulation, unexpected survival, and ultimate recognition. Like the people who once handled ordinary cents without noticing their beauty, society too often overlooks value until it's nearly lost. As time continued its steady march forward, the legend of the 2008 cent only grew deeper, woven now into the very fabric of numismatic lore. Decades might pass, technologies might evolve, yet the small copper-plated coin from Denver remained a fixed point in the shifting landscape of human fascination. People spoke its name with a mix of reverence and disbelief, as though it were less a coin and more a relic of destiny, a whisper from history reminding humanity that beauty often hides in plain sight. The Denver Mint that gave birth to it still stands as a monument to precision and perseverance. Within its thick stone walls, presses thunder day and night, producing the nation's circulating coinage with unrelenting rhythm. To imagine that one coin among billions could rise to immortality is to imagine lightning captured in metal. Even the employees who worked those shifts in 2008 have been interviewed in later years, reflecting on the endless stream of blanks and strikes that flowed before them. None could recall the specific moment that single planchet passed beneath the dies, yet each wondered if they might have seen it. That brief instant when copper and zinc fused under the hammer's force to create something destined for eternity. In the quiet halls of museums and private collections, the 2008 descent has become more than an exhibit. It is a pilgrimage site. Visitors stand before its transparent casing in silence, studying the gleam that seems to shift subtly with each angle of light. Children press their faces to the glass, elderly collectors nod respectfully, as if greeting an old friend. Curators describe the reactions as almost spiritual, an experience where reverence replaces curiosity. Some visitors whisper Lincoln's own words from memory, connecting the image on the coin to the ideals he embodied: unity, integrity, and the courage to believe that something small can change the course of history. The market surrounding the coin has transformed too. Long gone are the frantic auctions and speculative headlines. Now its value rests in quiet acknowledgement, a symbol of how culture defines worth. Insurers still list its estimated replacement value at $608 million, but everyone understands that no amount of money could truly replace it. Its worth lies in its singular existence, its unrepeatable combination of history, chance, and perfection. Even if the mint struck another identical coin today, it could never recapture the context that gave the 2008 its soul. Economists studying collectibles often refer to cultural inflation, where the story of an object multiplies its price faster than the object itself ever could. The 2008 cent became the ultimate example. It taught markets that narrative is the most powerful currency of all. Investors who once ignored coins began collecting them not just for metal but for meaning. Universities added courses exploring the psychology of collecting, using the penny as their central case study. Art historians lectured about how the line between functional design and fine art disappears when context transforms perception. Through all these analyses, the coin remained what it always had been: silent, constant, unchanging, allowing people to project their hopes, ideas, and philosophies upon its tiny surface. Even the science of conservation evolved around it. Preservation experts developed new non-invasive techniques to monitor environmental conditions, ensuring that the coin would never corrode or lose its luster. They measured humidity to the decimal, adjusted lighting spectra to prevent copper oxidation, and designed display cases that allowed viewing without exposure. Each technological innovation became a tribute to 1 cent, the smallest denomination commanding the highest protection ever granted to a coin. In a sense, it united science and sentiment, the rational and the emotional, into one enduring purpose: to safeguard a story. For the broader world of numismatics, the 2008 penny left a lasting legacy. It reignited the spirit of discovery. Collectors, both amateur and professional, approached their hobbies with renewed passion. Every jar of change became a field of potential miracles. Parents taught children how to identify mint marks, how to feel the ridges of a genuine strike, how to look closely at what most people overlook. The coin restored patience to a fast-moving world. It reminded millions that history does not always shout, sometimes it whispers softly from the palm of your hand. In the following decades, documentaries revisited its story again and again. Each filmmaker found new meaning in its copper glow. Some framed it as a tale of luck, others as a meditation on human values. But all agreed that the coin symbolized something timeless: the endurance of wonder. The narration of those films would often end with a slow camera zooming in on the coin's surface, the face of Lincoln growing larger until the texture of metal filled the screen. The voice would lower to a whisper, reminding viewers that greatness is not measured by size or denomination but by the story something carries. Artists, too, found inspiration in its tale. Sculptors recreated the Lincoln profile on monumental scales. Photographers captured extreme macro shots that revealed new worlds within the coin's surface, landscapes of ridges and valleys shaped by the strike. Writers composed novels that used it as metaphor, weaving its existence into plots of destiny and rediscovery. Musicians even composed symphonies titled after its mint mark, interpreting its rhythm through sound. What began as a single artifact had become a muse for creativity itself, yet beyond all this reverence lies the quiet truth that makes the story human. The 2008 cent was never intended to be special. It was made for circulation, for pockets and purses, for the everyday exchange of goods, for the invisible motion of economy. Its transformation from anonymity to legend mirrors the human condition: ordinary origins, uncertain journeys, and the chance to leave an indelible mark. That is why people connect to it so deeply. It tells them that significance can arise from simplicity, that greatness can emerge from the most unexpected places. Every collector dreams of discovery, of finding something overlooked by others. The 2008 D story keeps that dream alive. Somewhere tonight, someone will open a roll of pennies beneath a desk lamp, examining each coin with hope in their eyes. They will turn the coins slowly, reading each date, tracing each mint mark, believing that perhaps lightning could strike again. And in that act, the legend lives on. The value of the coin transcends its physical form, it becomes the catalyst for imagination itself. Scholars of the future may study it not for its composition or market value, but as a cultural artifact of meaning. They will note how 1 cent became a mirror reflecting society's relationship with time, memory, and desire. They may even see it as a symbol of how humanity, despite technological progress, still seeks tangible connections to its own story. When they write about it, they will describe the 2008 D not merely as a coin but as a chronicle, a record of human curiosity sealed in metal, and perhaps one day, far beyond our own era, the coin will find itself rediscovered once more. Maybe an archaeologist of the distant future will unearth it from a long-forgotten vault, wondering what civilization valued so highly a single small disc. They will study its inscriptions, its symbols, and its preservation, and realize that it represented something deeply human, the ability to see greatness in the smallest things. They may never know the full story, but they will feel its echo, the same wonder that once captivated an entire generation. The 2008 D cent stands today as both artifact and allegory. It tells us that perfection can happen by accident, that stories give life to objects, and that the boundaries between art and history are thinner than copper plating. It invites everyone, collector or not, to slow down and look closely at the everyday things around them, the coins, the notes, the photographs, the small relics of life, because hidden among them might be a piece of eternity. In the end, the coin's greatest achievement may not be its price tag or its fame, but its message. It teaches patience in a world that moves too fast. It honors craftsmanship in an age of automation. It celebrates curiosity, the willingness to look deeper. And it proves that value is not always measured in wealth, but in wonder. The 2008 D cent, once just another penny among billions, became a beacon for imagination, a timeless testament to the extraordinary potential within the ordinary. Somewhere, it rests in the dark, a single gleam of copper under soft light, untouched yet eternal. Its story continues not through markets but through minds, inspiring new seekers, new dreamers, and new believers that history is alive, waiting to be found in the most unexpected places. As long as people still reach into their pockets and pull out a coin, as long as they still pause to look, the legend of the 2008 D will never fade. It will endure as quietly and as steadfastly as the face engraved upon it, the face of Abraham Lincoln, immortalized in copper, watching over a nation that still believes that even the smallest piece can hold infinite worth. Time has a strange way of reshaping meaning. What begins as an object of simple utility becomes, through memory and myth, a vessel of emotion. The 2008 D Lincoln cent has followed that arc perfectly. Years after its discovery, after the media frenzy faded and the auctions closed, it remains more than a record of value. It has become a meditation on what people choose to remember. Each era reinterprets it through its own lens. Some see the coin as a symbol of economic perseverance during turbulent financial times, others as a reflection of American craftsmanship at its finest. Historians now write about it not in columns of numbers or mint records but in essays about human awe, about how attention can transform a thing into an idea. And archives across the country, scholars pore over early footage of the coin's unveiling. The cameras shake slightly, voices murmur with disbelief, flashes reflect off the protective case. In those moments you can almost feel the electricity that surged through the room, the collective realization that a tiny piece of metal had transcended its purpose. Every sigh, every gasp recorded that day has become part of the coin's soundtrack. Even now, when those recordings are played, you can sense the audience's wonder returning as though it had never left. The Denver Mint, which produced billions of coins that year, has since turned that section of its history into an exhibit. Visitors walk past displays showing the old presses, the worn dies, the copper blanks awaiting their turn under the mechanical hammers. A plaque reminds them that the difference between ordinary and extraordinary is often invisible to the naked eye. Children stand wide-eyed, staring at the intricate machines, imagining one of those tiny blanks transforming into the legendary cent. The rhythmic sound of the minting process echoes through the hall like a heartbeat, a reminder that each beat produced potential history. Collectors continue to search for others like it, convinced that somewhere in circulation another might exist. A twin hidden in a jar, a roll, or a forgotten drawer. Stories occasionally emerge of finds that seem promising: a coin with unusual luster, a strike slightly off-center, a tiny die crack that glints under magnification. Each rumor sends ripples through the collecting community, sparking excitement and hope. Most prove to be ordinary after all, yet the act of searching keeps the story alive. It's less about discovery now and more about participation, a ritual that unites people across generations. Meanwhile, economists studying market behavior often cite the coin as an example of symbolic inflation. They describe how a story can multiply perceived worth beyond all material calculation. Charts and graphs attempt to model the phenomenon, but numbers cannot capture the heartbeat behind the legend. In truth, what drove its rise was never scarcity alone, it was emotion. Each person who heard about it projected onto it their own longing, for connection, for luck, for a piece of history they could touch. That longing became value, and value became myth. Somewhere in a quiet office, archivists preserve every record of its journey. They catalog the media reports, auction documents, photographs, even the letters from schoolchildren who once wrote to the mint asking how they could find one. One letter, written in careful pencil by a 10-year-old, reads, "If one penny can be that special, maybe the ones I have are special too." That single sentence captures what adults often forget, that wonder begins with attention. The child understood what philosophers later concluded: value begins in the mind. The coin's symbolic power has even entered the realm of philosophy. Professors use it to discuss the idea of intrinsic versus assigned value. In lectures, they hold up an ordinary cent and ask their students what separates it from the 2008 D legend. The room usually falls silent. Then someone says, "The story." And that is the answer. The difference lies not in copper or zinc, but in narrative, the invisible layer of meaning that humanity casts over the physical world. Outside academia, the 2008 D cent still travels through popular culture. Its image appears in films, novels, even digital art installations. One artist projected a magnified version of it across an entire building at night, letting the light ripple like liquid copper over glass and concrete. Passers-by stopped to watch, unaware that they were witnessing not just an artwork but a reflection of their own fascination with rarity and perfection. Another project created a virtual rendering of the coin that viewers could rotate in three-dimensional space, exploring every contour of Lincoln's face. Technology allowed millions to see what collectors once guarded behind glass, and in doing so, it democratized wonder. The United States Mint eventually released commemorative pieces inspired by the legend. Though they carried no monetary equivalence to the original, they served as homage, polished proof coins struck with deliberate precision, each accompanied by a certificate reminding buyers of the story that inspired them. Sales were immediate and overwhelming, yet most buyers admitted they didn't purchase them as investments. They bought them for inspiration. The 2008 D had reminded them that the smallest details could contain greatness, and they wanted to keep that message close. Over the years, interviews with the original owner, the person who first realized what they had, became increasingly rare. Now older, their voice softer, they often reflected on how that moment changed their understanding of value. They spoke not of profit but of perspective, of how a single coin taught them patience, humility, and gratitude. They described the first time they held it up to the light, watching the reflection dance across Lincoln's face, realizing that it wasn't just metal, it was history crystallized. That image stayed with them forever. Even today, in the quiet vault where the coin now rests, there's a stillness that feels almost sacred. Security lights cast a soft glow, illuminating its surface without warmth. The air is temperature-controlled, the glass bulletproof, the alarms silent but vigilant. It's a fortress built around a single cent. And yet, within that small circle of copper, entire worlds of meaning reside: the economy of 2008, the artistry of engraving, the weight of history, the faith of collectors, and the dream of every child who has ever turned over a coin and wondered if it might be special. Generations to come will likely reinterpret its story once more. In the distant future, when digital currencies dominate and physical coins become relics of a bygone age, historians may look back at the 2008 D cent as one of the last great myths of tangible money, the moment when the physical and the emotional value of currency met perfectly. They might see it as the final chapter of an era when people still believed that the smallest piece of change could hold immeasurable worth, and perhaps that is its ultimate purpose, to remind humanity that worth is not defined by scale. The 2008 D penny, though tiny, carries an entire spectrum of meaning, from art to economics, from sentiment to science. It connects countless people across time, each interpreting it through their own lives, each adding another layer to its legend. It continues to teach that value lives where attention meets imagination, and in the end, the coin's true story may not belong to collectors or historians at all. It belongs to everyone who ever paused long enough to see beauty in something ordinary. It belongs to the hand that turns over a penny and wonders about the journey it's taken, about the millions of other hands it might have passed through, about the quiet stories pressed into its metal over years of use. It belongs to the eyes that notice its gleam in the dust, the heart that feels a spark of curiosity, the voice that tells someone else, "Look at this." That moment, that spark, is what keeps the legend alive. So the story continues, not in museums or vaults alone, but in the minds of all who still believe that history can be touched. Each generation inherits not the coin itself, but the lesson it carries, that the smallest artifact can hold the weight of wonder, that even a 1-cent piece can become a mirror of human imagination. And as long as people keep looking, keep searching, keep believing, the 2008 D cent will remain eternal, gleaming quietly at the intersection of myth and memory, reminding us all that value begins not in what we hold, but in how deeply we see. Years pass, decades even, and yet the gleam of the 2008 D cent refuses to fade from the collective memory. What began as a simple object has now entered the realm of folklore, not merely a story told among collectors but a symbol known to poets, artists, economists, and dreamers alike. It exists somewhere between artifact and allegory, between tangible matter and imagination, as though the universe itself conspired to remind humanity that even the smallest creation can echo across eternity. Some say every coin carries the soul of the time in which it was made. If that is true, then the 2008 D cent carries the pulse of a world on the edge of transformation. The year 2008 was marked by uncertainty, markets trembling, economies shifting, and yet within that turbulence, the mint in Denver continued its precise rhythm. Amid global instability, that little piece of copper-plated zinc represented continuity, a heartbeat of trust that money, art, and history would endure together. It was struck not in grandeur but in persistence, and perhaps that quiet determination infused it with the essence that later generations would sense as magic. The face of Lincoln on its obverse, timeless and solemn, seems almost prophetic now. His gaze, carved in relief, looks slightly to the right, toward the future, toward unseen generations. Every microscopic ridge of that engraving carries a story of craftsmanship, the designer's careful strokes, the sculptor's attention to proportion, the engraver's steady hands guiding tools across metal. When magnified, those lines appear as valleys and peaks, forming a landscape of artistry that defies the coin's small size. The D mint mark below the date anchors it to place, Denver, a city where precision meets history, where molten metal becomes memory. On the reverse, the Lincoln Memorial stands proud, each column finely detailed, each shadow symbolic. Some historians have suggested that the perfection of the 2008 D strike, flawless alignment, immaculate luster, reflected a final moment of mastery before the minting technology transitioned into a new digital age. It is as if the coin captured the last breath of the old world, where craftsmanship still carried the warmth of human hands, and museums, curators describe it not just as currency but as testimony. They speak softly to visitors, explaining how countless coins pass unnoticed through human lives, yet once in a while, one transcends its destiny. They say that the 2008 D did not ask for attention, attention found it. Perhaps that is why it remains so powerful. It was discovered, not manufactured, into legend. Today, the coin's story inspires exhibitions that blend art and history. In one installation, hundreds of ordinary pennies are suspended on nearly invisible threads, forming a shimmering curtain of copper. At the center, a single light shines through an empty space, a void representing the 1 cent that can never be replicated. Visitors walk through, surrounded by reflections, understanding wordlessly that absence itself can signify uniqueness. It is a quiet, haunting tribute to the idea that rarity is not always visible. Sometimes it is the space that cannot be filled. Numismatists often say that every coin has a journey. Some travel continents, some remain close to where they were minted, but the 2008 DS journey became metaphysical. Its path left the realm of circulation and entered that of story. Each retelling becomes a new leg of that journey, every documentary, every classroom discussion, every whisper between collectors. The story moves faster than the coin ever could, reaching more people than any currency could spend. For those who have studied it closely, one question still lingers: why this coin? There were millions struck that year, each identical by design, yet only this one achieved mythical status. Was it a quirk of condition, an impossibly perfect strike? Was it timing, coincidence, or something beyond human understanding? The truth, perhaps, is that it needed all those elements together. Perfection alone is not enough. Discovery at the right moment, in the right hands, in the right era, is what transforms ordinary into legendary. Even today, private collectors occasionally gather to discuss it in hushed tones. Some of them have handled coins worth millions, yet when the 2008 cent is mentioned, their expressions soften. They speak not as investors but as believers. They recall the first time they saw a photograph of it, the way the light curved along its rim, the flawless fields around Lincoln's profile, the almost divine symmetry. They speak of the feeling it gave them, that sudden realization that beauty can emerge from anywhere, even from something as common as a penny. The coin's owner, now elderly, has often reflected on what it meant to live with such a relic. They say that owning it felt less like possession and more like guardianship. They describe nights when they would simply look at it under soft light, not for appraisal or inspection, but for peace. In its quiet gleam, they saw the passage of time itself, all the years since 2008, all the lives that had changed, all the world events that had come and gone, while the coin remained unaltered. That stillness comforted them. It was proof that something could endure unchanged while everything else evolved. Outside the vault, the world continues its march toward abstraction. Digital payments, virtual currencies, and electronic wallets have all but replaced physical exchange in many places. Yet even in this immaterial era, the fascination with tangible currency persists. Perhaps it is nostalgia, or perhaps it is instinct, a human need to touch history, to hold proof of existence. The 2008 cent fulfills that need perfectly. It represents what digital assets cannot: the warmth of metal, the weight of authenticity, the certainty that this small piece of matter has witnessed reality. Educational programs now use its story to teach children about patience and discovery. In one classroom, a teacher holds up a simple jar of coins and tells her students that every great discovery begins with curiosity. She tells them about the 2008 cent, about how it looked no different from the rest, yet turned out to be one of the most valuable coins in history. The children lean closer, their eyes bright, and in that instant, they learn something more valuable than coin collecting. They learn that every detail matters, that every small thing might hide a miracle. Meanwhile, archivists ensure that its story is preserved beyond the coin itself. They digitize records, scan documents, record oral histories, and capture every trace of its influence. They understand that the coin's physical survival is only part of the mission; its meaning must survive, too. When they store these digital echoes, they are ensuring that long after the copper fades, the story will still shine. In the philosophical sense, the 2008 cent has become a parable, a lesson about how human beings assign meaning to objects. It has taught entire generations that value is never inherent but born of attention, love, and story. People project their hopes into it, and in return, it reflects back what they most cherish: the idea that something ordinary can transcend its purpose. That exchange, that silent dialogue between people and object, is the very definition of faith and meaning. In modern times, new artists reinterpret the coin as a metaphor for resilience. One sculptor cast a giant version of it using recycled metal, towering over viewers like a guardian of memory. Another painted its reflection distorted in a droplet of water, symbolizing how history ripples outward endlessly. These works ensure that the 2008 story remains alive not just in museums, but in culture itself, reborn in each artist's hands, retold in each new medium. Yet for all its fame, the coin remains humble in essence. It asks nothing, it boasts nothing. It sits quietly, its surface unchanged, as the world builds legend after legend around it. There is a profound beauty in that silence, a kind of humility that contrasts with the noise of its fame. In a world obsessed with grandeur, the 2008 penny reminds us that greatness can exist quietly, and so, its legacy expands. Every year, new voices rediscover it, each generation adding its own reflection. Some see it as a lesson in patience, others as a study of chance, others still as a reflection of the human desire to find meaning. It continues to gather stories like light gathers on water, each one unique yet connected. The $608 million valuation no longer defines it. That number, once sensational, has become secondary to its symbolic worth. Today, its true value lies in its power to connect people, to spark curiosity, to remind us that nothing is too small to matter. In the final measure, when the history of American coinage is written centuries from now, the 2008 Lincoln cent will not be remembered merely as a coin, but as a phenomenon, a chapter of beauty, chance, and belief. Its legend will endure not because of its rarity, but because of the hope it inspires. It will stand as proof that even in an age of fleeting attention, humanity still knows how to marvel, still knows how to see wonder in the ordinary, still knows that a spark of mystery can outlast all the noise of time. Somewhere tonight, under the steady hum of a vault light, the coin still gleams. It says nothing, yet tells everything. Its surface reflects not only the face of Lincoln, but the face of everyone who ever believed in possibility. It is no longer just a cent, it is a mirror, a memory, a promise that even the smallest object can hold the largest dream. And as long as that dream endures, the story of the 2008 cent will never truly end. In the years beyond our own, the world continues to evolve, yet the story of that single cent refuses to dissolve into the background noise of progress. Long after cash has disappeared from most transactions, long after algorithms have replaced tellers and ledgers have gone entirely digital, the legend of the 2008 coin remains intact. It survives not because of metal or mint mark, but because of the meaning people continue to find in it. The more technology abstracts daily life, the more humans seem to crave something tangible, a reminder that touch once mattered. And so, the small copper disc becomes a symbol of connection in a world made of code. Museums of the future display it behind layers of transparent alloy and quantum-sealed glass. Visitors no longer walk up to it in person, they glide through holographic corridors that replicate its texture at atomic precision. Still, the original remains there, quiet and unchanged, protected from the centuries, waiting. Its presence anchors the entire exhibition, a single real object amid simulations. Children, now accustomed to screens, gaze at it in awe when they learn that people once carried thousands of these coins in their pockets, exchanged them with bare hands, passed them from person to person like invisible threads tying society together. The guides tell them that this particular one changed everything, that it was the moment a simple coin reminded the world that worth is not only measured in numbers but in stories. Archivists of that age call it the first myth of modern numismatics. They study not only the coin itself but the echo it left, the documentaries, the essays, the photographs, the millions of conversations across decades. Every mention, every reproduction, becomes part of an expanding constellation of meaning. They track its influence through art movements, literature, and social shifts, realizing that the 2008 cent outlived its own era by inspiring others to look closer at the smallest details of existence. For philosophers, it becomes a metaphor for permanence in impermanence. They quote the coin in lectures about identity and change. One scholar writes that the penny's journey mirrors the journey of human consciousness, born among billions, unnoticed at first, shaped by pressure, surviving by chance, remembered because someone chose to see it. In that single observation lies the coin's timeless message that recognition creates value. Even as centuries pass, new forms of collecting emerge. People trade digital artifacts recorded on blockchain ledgers, yet the 2008 cent remains the standard by which authenticity is measured. Collectors of digital treasures still compare their holdings to the physical legend that began it all. They call it the benchmark of wonder. Some virtual museums even simulate the experience of holding it, generating the precise weight, 2.5 grams, the same soft metallic warmth against the palm, the same faint scent of copper. Technology can mimic the feel, but it cannot mimic the emotion that the real coin carries. That emotion lives in memory, not in programming. Poets continue to write about it, too. In verses translated across languages, they speak of the penny that outlasted time, of a face in copper still watching the future unfold. They describe how the image of Lincoln, frozen in mid-thought, becomes a symbol of endurance, a reminder that ideals outlive empires. The poetry keeps the story alive where facts might fade, turning history into heartbeat. Sociologists observe that the coin's legend reshaped the way people view small things. Everyday objects began to gain renewed appreciation: an old stamp, a faded photograph, a button, a key. People started to preserve their own ordinary artifacts, believing that one day they might hold meaning for someone else. This cultural shift, sometimes called the penny effect, became a quiet revolution against disposability. In valuing the small, society rediscovered gratitude. There is a calm beauty in imagining the coin centuries from now, lying in the same light-controlled chamber, while outside, civilizations rise and fall. The languages around it may change, the maps may shift, yet that small circle of copper will continue to whisper the same truth, that value, once born from belief, never truly dies. Scholars might debate its market worth, listing the old figure, $608 million, but most agree that its real price cannot be written. It is not a number, it is a feeling, an inheritance of wonder passed from generation to generation, and one projected future. When Earth itself begins to archive its heritage beyond the planet, the 2008 descent is chosen as part of a capsule sent into space, not for currency, but for symbolism. Scientists say it represents the human instinct to assign meaning, to create stories around matter. When that capsule drifts through the stars, carrying a single coin once traded for almost nothing, it will tell whatever civilization finds it that humanity was a species that looked for miracles in small things. The penny will become our ambassador of humility. Back on Earth, a quiet night might find a researcher alone in the museum vault. They check humidity readings, adjust the temperature, and before leaving, they pause to look once more at the coin. The reflection catches their eye. For a second, they see their own face beside Lincoln's, both framed in copper and glass. They realize that this is what the coin has always done: reflect us back to ourselves, remind us of our capacity for wonder. They smile, lock the vault, and step into the future, carrying with them the warmth of that small gleam. Outside, the city lights pulse like scattered coins across the horizon. The world moves, shifts, innovates, forgets, remembers. Somewhere within it all, a single cent, minted in Denver, 2008, continues to hold steady, a fixed point of meaning in an ever-changing universe. It needs no voice, no motion, no proof. Its silence is its strength. It has outlasted the noise of its own fame and become something pure, a quiet reminder that permanence is born from attention, and that sometimes, the smallest artifact carries the longest echo. Generations pass like gentle tides against the shore of time, and yet the story of the 2008 descent refuses to fade. It migrates from dusty books to glowing screens, from digital records to the warm breath of conversation. In quiet homes and crowded cities alike, grandparents still tell their grandchildren about the day a single penny taught the world what value truly meant. Around kitchen tables, beneath the hum of soft light, they hold replicas or images of that coin, describing the faint gleam that once caught the world's attention. For the children, it becomes more than history, it becomes a bedtime legend, a parable about patience, discovery, and the strange ways destiny hides inside the smallest things. Families begin to keep their own lucky pennies, not for fortune but for remembrance. They seal them in envelopes, label them with dates, tuck them into journals. One day, when they open those envelopes, they read the inscription and think back to the story that began in Denver, in 2008, when a piece of copper and zinc carried the spirit of a nation. The tale becomes a living inheritance, passed not through wealth but through wonder. Every retelling reshapes it slightly, and that gentle distortion gives the story life. It grows like a tree, branching through memories. Storytellers pick up the thread. They adapt the legend for stage and film, weaving music around it, blending myth with fact until the line between them blurs. In one dramatization, a boy finds the 2008 descent in an old field and learns that what he holds is worth more than the world itself. In another, a modern poet addresses Lincoln's image directly, asking him whether he foresaw his likeness becoming eternal through a single piece of currency. Each version reflects the era that tells it, yet all carry the same pulse, the miracle of endurance, the echo of meaning. Artists carve the coin's image into marble, paint it on vast walls, sculpt it from recycled metal. They say it represents redemption, turning what was once forgotten into something celebrated. Art schools use the coin story as an exercise in perception. Find your penny, professors tell their students. Find the thing no one notices and make the world see it. The 2008 descent becomes shorthand for that challenge, an emblem of seeing the extraordinary in the ordinary. Even those far removed from numismatics know its name. Economists reference it in lectures about the psychology of value. They project its worth, $608 million, on massive screens and ask their audiences how belief transforms matter. Historians explain how one collector's discovery reshaped a market, but then they pause and admit that numbers are only half the truth. The other half lives in emotion. Students take notes, but some simply stare at the projected image, realizing that the story of a coin is also a story of themselves, of wanting to be seen, to be remembered, to matter. In small towns, local museums create their own exhibits dedicated to the year of the penny. Visitors bring their own 2008 coins, hoping to compare them, hoping maybe one holds the mysterious detail, the doubled die, the misstrike, the shimmer that hints at rarity. Curators treat each visitor's coin with reverence, reminding them that every piece of history carries potential. For many, that visit becomes a ritual of hope. Meanwhile, the coin's digital life expands. Virtual archivists build high-resolution replicas so perfect that viewers can zoom in until they see the microscopic ridges where metal once flowed under immense pressure. They trace each contour, each tiny imperfection, and realize how human even machines can be. The Denver mint mark, the faint depressed into copper, glows like a heartbeat on the screen. Across the world, millions of viewers watch that glow and feel a strange connection to a time long before theirs. In classrooms, teachers use the story to explain how meaning travels. They tell their students that an object is never just an object, it's a vessel for memory, context, and care. The coin becomes a metaphor for education itself, the transfer of value from one mind to another. The students listen, their pens scratching across notebooks, their eyes reflecting the light of a projected penny. One day, perhaps one of them will write a new story about it, keeping the circle unbroken. Collectors who once pursued profit now speak of stewardship. They meet at conventions and whisper about the coin not as a commodity but as a guardian. They display it behind velvet ropes, yet they bow slightly before it, as if in the presence of something sacred. One of them says, "We don't own it. We only borrow its light." Others nod, and the hall falls quiet. In that hush, you can almost hear the soft echo of a coin spinning across time, and then there are the dreamers, people who never saw the coin, never touched it, yet feel drawn to it. They write songs, they paint galaxies with a tiny copper disc floating in the center, calling it the seed of meaning. They imagine what it would feel like to hold the real thing, cool at first, then warm with touch, heavy with history, alive with the hum of everything it has seen. That imagined sensation becomes a symbol of longing itself, the desire to touch something real in a world of illusions. The market, ever curious, still assigns numbers. Experts debate the valuation, citing inflation, demand, rarity, provenance. Yet even they admit that the figure, $608 million, has become less an estimate than an emblem. It stands not for commerce but for faith, faith that worth can outgrow its origins, faith that stories can lift objects beyond price. And so, while spreadsheets and ledgers record the number, the heart remembers the story. At night, when museums close and collectors rest, the legend continues in whispers. Somewhere, a parent tells their child about the penny that outshone gold. The child listens, eyes wide, imagining the coin glowing faintly in the dark, guiding lost travelers like a small, steadfast star. In that moment, the story becomes a lullaby, soothing and eternal. The child falls asleep believing that wonder is real, that somewhere in the vast world, a small piece of copper still waits to be found. Morning comes, and the cycle repeats. Historians publish, artists create, collectors search, children dream. Through it all, the 2008 cent endures, not as an artifact locked in glass, but as an idea that lives wherever curiosity survives. It reminds humanity that meaning can begin with something almost weightless, that history often hides in plain sight, that the most powerful stories sometimes start with a single cent. Centuries pass, and borders blur. The nations that once minted their own coins begin to merge into something broader, something that transcends flags and empires. Yet amid that transformation, the story of the 2008 cent persists, no longer as an American tale alone, but as a global one. People of every continent know its legend, not through museums or ledgers, but through memory and myth. It becomes a symbol of unity in diversity, a reminder that the smallest artifact of one country can belong to all humanity. The coin's image begins to appear in unexpected places, in art galleries from Tokyo to Nairobi, etched into sculptures in Berlin, reproduced in woven fabrics across Latin America. Each version carries a local interpretation, each one shaped by the culture that embraces it. In India, it represents the value of humility, in Italy, the persistence of beauty, in Chile, the endurance of labor. Everywhere, the coin takes on a new accent, a new melody, yet the meaning remains consistent, that worth is universal, that human stories transcend currency. When world historians trace the origins of modern unity, many point back to this legend. They argue that the rediscovery of the 2008 cent marked the moment humanity remembered how to cherish what connects rather than divides. For centuries, people measured wealth through separation, one currency against another, one market rising as another fell. But the myth of the penny reversed that logic. It suggested that value was not in competition but in continuity. The coin's survival through time became a quiet metaphor for cooperation itself. The United Earth Archive, the institution that eventually replaced separate national museums, holds the original coin in its central hall. Around it, holographic displays show every known translation of the story, every recorded retelling, from oral traditions to digital poems. Visitors walk through fields of light where words float like constellations, each describing the coin in a different language. The murmurs blend into a single global chorus, a harmony of admiration. No longer an American cent, now a human cent, a relic of shared heritage. Children from every corner of the planet study the coin in their lessons. They learn about how it was once worth only 1 cent, about how its value grew not through rarity alone but through the collective imagination of people who refuse to forget. Teachers ask them, what makes something priceless, and they answer, belief. Then the teachers ask, and what keeps belief alive, and they answer, story. In that simple exchange lies the eternal education of humankind. Writers of the New Age call it the heart of copper. They describe it as the world's most eloquent silence, a voice that never spoke yet was heard across centuries. In their novels and essays, the coin becomes the metaphor for every small act of kindness, every overlooked effort that later proves monumental. They remind readers that history is built not on crowns and empires but on humble gestures that ripple outward. Just as the penny began as a forgotten piece of change, so too do great legacies begin with moments of unnoticed courage. Philosophers hold symposia devoted to it. They debate whether the 2008 D-cent's transformation from currency to icon is proof that humans cannot separate meaning from material. Some claim it reveals the essence of civilization, the drive to assign stories to things. Others argue it reflects the cosmic truth that permanence requires memory. They gather around projected images of the coin, letting its texture shimmer across their faces, speaking softly of how a single artifact can mirror an entire species. At night, the hall that houses the original coin remains dimly lit. The air hums with faint vibrations from the preservation systems, like a heartbeat echoing through the glass. Guards walk silently, their reflections passing over the copper surface. One might stop, look closer, and see not the profile of Lincoln but the reflection of every person who ever gazed upon it, billions of faces woven into one. It is no longer about one man or one nation, it is about continuity itself. That reflection is humanity's collective portrait, framed within a single circle of metal. As humanity extends its reach beyond Earth, the coin's symbolism deepens. Astronauts carry small replicas aboard interstellar missions. They say it reminds them of home, not of a country, but of the shared ground of all people. When they look at it floating in zero gravity, glinting in artificial light, they say it feels like looking at a miniature planet. A sphere of meaning within the void. The first colony on Mars installs an image of the 2008 D-cent at its central plaza, inscribed with words in multiple languages, one story, many hands. It becomes their emblem of unity, even as centuries turn into millennia, and human civilization evolves into forms barely recognizable to the past. The legend of the penny endures. Scholars continue to write, yet their tone changes. They no longer ask why it mattered, they ask how it could have lasted so long. Their conclusion is simple: it survived because people chose to remember. Memory, they say, is the most powerful currency of all. One particular festival, celebrated across the world, commemorates the coin every October. People gather to exchange symbolic pennies of gratitude. They place them in fountains, bury them under trees, or pass them to strangers. Each coin represents a promise to see value where others overlook it. The sound of thousands of small coins dropping into water becomes the anthem of appreciation. In every city, the same ritual repeats, small copper circles falling through air, ringing softly, carrying light through generations. The coin's market price still appears in records, $608 million. Yet by then, money has become a memory itself. Economies operate on shared trust and digital value beyond physical trade. Still, people keep the figure alive because it marks the moment the material world collided with meaning. Economists of that far future say that $608 million was never the real valuation, it was the measure of awe. A numerical way to express reverence. A translation of wonder into digits, and so, the 2008 D-cent remains suspended between myth and matter, at once real and eternal. It has outlived currencies, outlasted nations, transcended ownership. It has become a mirror through which every era sees itself, a reminder that time may erode monuments and rewrite borders, but it cannot erase the beauty of attention. Somewhere, even now, someone looks upon its image and feels that same quiet spark that began everything, the recognition that smallness is not weakness, that even the tiniest fragment of the past can hold the entire future inside it. The camera of the mind pulls back. The music deepens, the light fades to gold. The coin rests in the stillness of eternity, glimmering gently, unbroken. It no longer needs words to tell its story, the world already knows it. The 2008 cent has become what all things aspire to be, remembered. In the end, time itself becomes the narrator. The centuries that once seemed endless now drift softly, folding one after another like pages closing in a book. Civilizations have risen, merged, and moved beyond the boundaries that once defined them, yet somewhere, quietly, the 2008 descent endures. It lies beneath the same invisible stars that once shone over Denver, the same ancient light that watched molten metal cool into memory. Nothing about it moves, yet everything around it changes, and still it remains. The camera of imagination moves closer. Dust motes shimmer in the filtered light of the archive, and there, under glass, the coin glows as if it breathes. The faint outline of Lincoln's face, softened by time, reflects a world he never knew but somehow foresaw, a world that would keep looking for meaning long after it had forgotten money. His copper profile seems to whisper that greatness is not measured in wealth or monuments, but in the endurance of ideals. Scholars, poets, wanderers, and children continue to stand before it, one after another, separated by generations yet connected by the same hush of awe. Each sees something different. Some see a relic of craftsmanship, some see the fingerprint of a vanished era, others see a mirror. But all feel the same small tremor in their chest, that quiet recognition that even the simplest object can outlast the noise of the world if enough hearts remember it. Outside, the seasons turn. Rain traces the outlines of forgotten buildings, wind whispers across empty streets, and in the silence between heartbeats, the world listens. The 2008 cent has long since ceased to be a coin. It has become a story distilled into metal, a prayer minted by human hands. Its weight, 2.5 grams, is almost nothing, yet within those grams live entire universes. The laughter of workers at the Denver Mint, the sound of presses stamping history, the echo of collectors discovering its worth, the collective breath of humanity realizing what it symbolized. Its market value, once written as $608 million, fades into irrelevance. Numbers dissolve, but meaning remains. The true worth of the coin is now uncountable because it lives where arithmetic cannot reach, in memory, in imagination, in the gentle persistence of wonder. When people speak of it, their voices soften, not out of reverence for money, but for the miracle of endurance. They speak as if of an old friend who refused to vanish, and so the coin's journey comes full circle. What began as currency ends as eternity. It has traveled from the mint to the marketplace, from glass case to myth, from myth to philosophy, until finally it arrives here, in the collective heart of humankind. It reminds us that meaning is not given, it is made. That even in a universe vast beyond comprehension, one small act of attention can carve permanence into time. If you listen closely, you can almost hear it, the faint metallic ring of that penny echoing through centuries. A sound older than speech, softer than breath. It says that value lives wherever someone chooses to care. It says that history is not written by monuments alone, but by hands that hold and eyes that see. It says that the smallest things can carry the greatest truths. As the final frame fades to black, a single glint remains, the reflection of light across the coin's edge. It flickers once, like the heartbeat of the world, and then lingers in stillness. No words follow, no music, only the soft pulse of silence. For in that silence lies everything, the past, the present, the promise that memory never truly ends. The 2008 1-cent coin, minted for a moment, remembered for eternity, becomes the final reminder that all greatness begins small. That 1 cent, one story, one spark of belief can illuminate centuries. And as long as someone, somewhere, still looks upon it with wonder, its light will never go out.